Hello, and welcome to Book Reviews Kill, a podcast about fantasy, sci-fi, and horror novels. I'm Evan.
And I'm Chad.
And today you are listening to our recap and discussion of Homeland, Book 1 in the Dark Elf Trilogy by R.A. Salvatore. You know what, Chad? Sometimes it's just nice to see the good guys being good guys.
Yup.
That was so good. It was so good. It was exactly what I needed. It's fall, it's wintertime, it's the holiday season, and I wanted something. I wanted popcorn. I wanted coziness, and
it's the peanut butter jelly sandwich of fantasy novels.
That's such a good way of putting it.
Crust removed.
The food metaphors on this podcast will never stop.
I don't even think about it.
But wow, yeah, this was really excellent. It was light, but it was heavy hitting though. You know what I mean? There was a lot in here. It felt dense without being slow. It was all the right pieces assembled into something that just. There was never a dull moment. There was never a moment in Homeland where I was like, why am I reading this? I don't care about these characters. And like we said in the Monday morning episode that we did a couple days ago, it's not as complicated as I thought it was going to be going into it. Because like I read the back cover and it seemed like a lot of political machinations going on. And that's really happening in the background. The story is really centering around Drizzt and his whole moral dilemma, which we're going to get into after the recap here.
There's definitely a political system, and he takes the time necessary to lay out the world and the inner machinations of their hierarchy within Menzoberranzan, the Drow city that he grows up in. But like, that is just the cushion for the vehicle of the story that you're writing on. It is not even kind of the main part of it, you know?
Right. Sorry, I got caught up in your...
I tried to go not food. I was going to say the au jus sauce that you dip, and I was like, no, Chad, no
I think
food.
you just got to stick to food, man. You're so good with food. The cushion for the vehicle.
Because it's not quite the vehicle, you know, that'd be too much.
Yeah. No, totally. Oh my God, I love you. I'm so glad that I'm reading these, though. I mean, like, I love fantasy that's been coming out in the last few years. And I'm really excited for a lot of stuff that's going to be coming out soon. But it's just so nice to dip over into like early 90s, like late 80s, early 90s fantasy. There's just nothing like it. There's nothing like the Dark Elf Trilogy.
I call it basic fantasy, but by saying that, I don't mean anything derogatory. I mean, it's not like the Chuck E. Cheese of fantasy novels. Like, not at all. There's like dark parts, there's emotional parts, there's real themes. It's just classic. Mm-hmm. I don't even know any other way to describe it. It's just very classic.
Well, and Salvatore's writing is he really does write like a dungeon master describing. Yeah. He's just like, and then he twirled around his foe with his scimitars shining in the light of the glowing purple rocks. And
Drizzt skitters a lot.
He skitters and he's always rolling and he's always just like, he's always ready to go. He's always unsheathing his scimitars. And
the flick of his wrist, both blades are in his hands.
Both blades are in his hands. Right before the recap, I just want to get into this real quick. I'm really glad that I read the Icewind Dale trilogy first, because this is an origin story. This is, the knowledge that I have of the way that Drizzt is being treated on the surface world in Icewind Dale. Now I'm kind of like looking at both of those, and it's really cool to see the society that he grew up in, and the reason that, not only the reason that he feels the way he does about his homeland,
no.
But the reason that the surface dwellers have all this animosity towards the Drow as well, it puts a lot in perspective, for sure.
Definitely does, because you kind of think in some of those first books, I read it in the same order. I read the Icewind Dale trilogy, Crystal Shard, Halfling's Gem, Streams of Silver, and then I read Homeland, Legacy, Sojourn.
I think it's Exile, Sojourn.
Oh, you're right. Homeland, Exile, Sojourn. Thank you. You kind of think, man, all the surface dwellers are like super racist. And while, yes, that is true, that's a very, and I can't believe this sentence is about to come through my list, but very well-founded racism.
Oh, my God.
like they are the worst race.
The Drow,
they're awful.
But I want to get into that a little bit, too, after the recap, because I have questions about the Drow. I have questions. There's... and that's one of the cool things about Salvatore is, yes, this is popcorn fantasy, sure, if you really want to call it that. But there's some deeper stuff going on here for sure.
Certainly.
And I really want to talk about it. So let's just get straight into the recap here.
I am so excited. Let's do it.
The book begins in the underground city of Menzoberranzan. We follow House Duerden, 10th of the Drow houses as they launch an assault upon House Devere, a rival house ranked 9th in the ever-evolving station of the Underdark. While the battle rages, Drizzt is born. His mother is Malice, the Do'Urden matron mother, and his father, consort, Do'Urden weapon master, and sometimes patron, Zaknafein. As the third son, Drow culture demands that Drizzt be sacrificed to their goddess Loth, the Spider Queen. However, the death of his older brother and the first son, Nalfine, incidentally at the treacherous hand of the second son, Dinin, in the battle against House Devere, makes him the second son and spares his life. Meanwhile, as part of House Do'Urden's elimination plan, the wizard Alton Devere is attacked by Gelrus Hunet, also known as the Faceless one of the masters at Sorceer, the school for mages in Menzoberranzan. Alton, the last of House Devere, is saved by Mashaj Hunet, the younger brother of Gelrus, and an apprentice at Sorceer, who kills Gelrus. Masaj threatens to kill Alton, but the now houseless mage makes a bargain with Masaj. In return for his life, Alton will assume the Faceless One's identity and mentor Masaj, as well as ease the apprentice's way through his magical studies at Sorceer. To ensure that the illusion is complete, Masaj scars Alton's face with acid, and the new Faceless One remains at Sorceer, where he begins to plan his revenge on the house that had massacred his own. Being a male in the matriarchal Drow society, Drizzt Do'Urden suffers considerable abuse at the hands of his family, particularly his eldest sister, Briza, in his first 16 years of life. His first 10 years are spent in the care of his sister, Vierna. As a young Drow, Drizzt displays amazing ability and reflexes. As a result, Zaknafein is able to persuade Malice that Drizzt should become a warrior instead of replacing Nalfine as the house wizard. Drizzt begins training with weapons under Zaknafein's tutelage, learning the skills that will lead him to become one of the most formidable swordsmen in the Underdark. At 20 years old, Drizzt attends Melee Magthir, Menzoberranzan's warrior academy, where he excels in his studies despite his trepidation at absorbing the Drow brainwashing so prevalent in his lessons. He excels in all his fighting bouts, but when it comes time for him to graduate, he disgraces himself by not taking part in the ritual. He refuses the advances of two high priestesses, one of them his sister, Vierna, and condemns Loth. Vierna, angered by Drizzt's defiance, takes Drizzt to a Drider lair to show him what happens to those who defy the Spider Queen. She plans to leave him for dead, but Drizzt's mother interferes and saves Drizzt from certain death by the Driders. She threatens to turn Drizzt into one of the hideous creatures if she hears of any more defiance from him. Drizzt graduates with honors, even though he did not participate in the ceremony. After his graduation, Drizzt begins patrolling the Underdark with his assigned patrol group. He witnesses firsthand the cruelty of his race as the Drow conduct a surface raid in which Drizzt saves the life of a child of the most bitter enemy of the Drow, the Surface Elves, by hiding her body underneath the corpse of her murdered mother. Zaknafein, having similar morals to Drizzt, believes Drizzt killed the child, but Loth knows he allowed the child to survive, which causes House Do'Urden to fall out of the Spider Queen's favor. Zaknafein, fearing that Drizzt had succumbed to the evil ways of the Drow, fights with Drizzt, until Drizzt admits what really happened on the surface. Upon hearing Drizzt's account, Zaknafein reveals that Drizzt is indeed his child. They plan to escape House Do'Urden and live in the caverns of the Underdark. Unfortunately, Matron Malice and her daughters, in a bid to find out why Do'Urden was no longer in Loth's favor, are watching. Malice, under pressure to destroy the threat of House Hunet, and with one of her sons being openly insubordinate, hatches a plan. Drizzt sets off to work through his inner turmoil in the more peaceful tunnels of the Underdark. Learning that Drizzt had journeyed from his house alone, Masaj attempts to kill him by ordering Guinevere, his panther companion, to find and kill the young warrior. Unbeknownst to Masaj or the magical panther, Drizzt's inner thoughts had distracted him to his dangerous surroundings, allowing him to be ensnared by a cave fisher. When Guinevere finds Drizzt near death, her concern for his safety overcomes Masaj's orders, and she helps him slay the cave fisher. Drizzt then helps Guinevere understand that she is her own master and can overcome the commands given to her by Massage. The Panther leads Drizzt to Massage, who with the assistance of Altan tries to kill the young Do'Urden. The ensuing battle results in both of the mages' deaths. After the fight, Drizzt makes a vow to never kill another drow again, and he takes possession of the magical statuette used to summon Guinevere before returning to Menzoberranzan. Malice knows the only way to rectify this situation is to offer Drizzt as a sacrifice to Loth. Malice informs Zaknafein of the plan to sacrifice her son, but Zaknafein offers himself in Drizzt's stead. This was Malice's intention all along. She believes that once Zaknafein is dead, Drizzt would begin behaving like a proper drow noble, and take the position of weapons master with pride. When Drizzt learns of his father's demise, he confronts Matron Malice. She tells him that Zaknafein was sacrificed to Loth in order to regain the Spider Queen's favor, and that Drizzt will become House Do'Urden's new weapon master. Drizzt refuses outright, and using one of Zaknafein's weapons, an exploding ball of light, escapes into the Underdark.
Okay, I gotta start off by saying I just want to kind of set the scene a little bit for anyone who has not read these books by talking about Menzoberranzan and the system of how it rules. So this town, the city is, in the Underdark. So the world is riddled with hundreds of thousands of miles of caves going hundreds, if not thousands of miles deep into the core of this planet. And this city is in a ginormous cavern in the Underdark, and all of the buildings are constructed out of mostly natural, some made stalactites and stalagmites. And each compound is a house that is ruled by the matriarchal mother of the house, and they're all ranked. The top 10 houses are invited to be members of the ruling council of
I think it's the top 8.
Oh, is it the top 8?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So the top 8 are on the ruling council of Menzoberranzan. Thus, those are very coveted positions. And the way that the system works, it's like kind of lauded and held to high esteem if one house can take out another house. But if they leave any evidence pointing back to them being the attacker, even if everyone knows like it was totally them, but no one can actually point the finger at them and be like, I was there, I saw it, then they get away and everyone just kind of goes, good on ya, house.
Yeah, see, that's so funny that you brought that up because I've made a note of this and I wanted to ask you about it. I thought it was really interesting that as a house, you're basically allowed to destroy another house as long as nobody sees you do it. But it seemed kind of weird because House Do'Urden at the beginning of the book is walking through like what you could basically call the center of town. It's like everyone knows what they're going to go do. Yeah, they don't know. They might not know like literally exactly what house they're going to go attack, but it's like, okay, so House Devere fell this night, this date, and we all saw House Do'Urden like traipsing through with an army. Like, I mean, so is it more nuanced than that? You know what I mean?
It's basically if you leave any members of the household alive who can be like, it's like who has right to point the finger, and the family member has right, which is why it's such a big deal that they leave that one wizard alive who scars his face and everything.
Totally.
Because he could actually point the finger, and when that happens, the other 8 houses all get together and take out that city, which in a mighty display of magical awesomeness.
Okay, cool. That all makes sense. I was like, why are they did it so publicly?
Like, everyone knows.
They did it. Yeah. Like, I mean, maybe some of the other houses don't know, but there seem to be sort of like common folk around,
like House 30th house or whatever,
Yeah, there's like 50 something of them or something like that. But the top 8 to 15 or whatever seem to count the most. I have another question here. This is cool.
Yeah.
Like, I've got the questions for you this time.
I know. This is
great. You know what you're talking about.
I do. I've read these books many times.
Okay. So I thought it was pretty interesting that even though Drizzt absolutely hates the way the drow behave, he wouldn't even be alive if it weren't for how utterly ruthless they all are. So because Dinan kills his brother right before Drizzt is going to be sacrificed.
Because he wanted to be weapon master, is that right?
Well, did you catch the irony there? That Drizzt hates. Yeah. I'm not saying it's it's like a now Drizzt shouldn't hate the way it all is, but it was interesting that like, do you think that Salvatore did that on purpose? Like, do you think that he made it so that Drizzt wouldn't even be alive if it wasn't for this society that he hates so much? Because if he did that on purpose, that's really good. That's really
it's 100% on purpose. And there's even like a I think they do it in these books, but every few chapters you get that little italicized page and a half that's like Drizzt's diary, his inner thoughts. Do they do it in this book?
Yeah, it's like a little first person snippet.
Yeah, where he's talking about like what he's struggling with, what's on his mind. And in the later books, he kind of has a like crisis of like who he is, because he very much acknowledges that like the system that created him and made him who he is, like the greatest swordsman and all capable of so much, is also the thing that he hates so much. So it's like this weird like I am a product of this thing that I hate, but I wouldn't be who I am without it sort of conflict. And then it's a major like conflict of what's the word I'm looking for? Identity for him later on in the books.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Notice. That's a really good notice.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and it's like it's crazy. The Drow are so blessed in their innate abilities, right? Because in order to be a Drow, or if you're a Drow, or I think it's like if you're high up in the Drow, you're like a nobleman, which Drizzt certainly is. Then you're born with the innate ability of fairy fire, which you can just like snap your fingers and outline something or anyone in just like this flame that doesn't hurt anybody, but it can mark them.
Yeah, and they can drop like pools of darkness.
Yeah, globe of darkness, impenetrable inky blackness, which is so cool. And then they can also levitate.
Yeah, they can float around.
Yeah, which is really cool. There's a bunch of battle scenes later on where, the Drow, they use this little hand crossbow thing. It's like this tiny little, like, it's like a blow dart, except it's a crossbow that they have in their hands. Tiny little thing. And there's so many times that Drows are like floating up to attack, and they're getting taken out with these darts, and then they're just like hanging limp in the air until their spell goes out before they plummet to the ground.
Wow, what a cool way to play with that whole system.
I know. Fun. Here's some trivia, or not trivia, but can you tell me which one is the one that's on the ceiling or the ground? Stalagmites or stalactites?
I think stalagmites are on the ground and stalactites are on the ceiling.
Correct.
Is that right? Hey.
Yeah, because stalactites hang tight to the ceiling.
Oh, wow.
That's how I always remember.
I think my association was that stalagmite has an M in it, which is really close to an N, which is really close to the word ground, or ground has the word N in it. I don't know why.
Oh, wow. More complicated, but whatever.
I know, right? Yeah.
Whatever it takes to remember,
So this is a really big talking point, and this is what I want. This is the main thrust of what I want this whole conversation to be around, because we could go on about this for hours.
Thrust,
hours and hours. Where do you think Drizzt's morals come from? I found myself wondering that for most of the book. Like, obviously, all the other Drow are totally fine with this situation, for the most part, except for Zaknafein and Drizzt. And I'm tempted to think that it was all Zaknafein's doing, but Drizzt was showing signs of being uncomfortable with this whole situation before he really started training heavily with Zak. So I don't think it's all Zak's influence, but Zak did have a lot to do with his growth as a whole.
Definitely shaping him. Yeah.
But Drizzt is like, he starts out like not cool with this whole situation, or at least questioning it to more of a degree than the other Drows are. What do you think's up with that?
I don't really know. I mean, obviously, I think it's a little bit of like genetically passed on to him from Zaknafein, but besides that, he's just kind of the one Drow who was born with a conscience.
That's so odd to me.
It have something to do with the fact that he was going to be sacrificed, but then didn't. So maybe Lolth didn't like instill him with the evil. I don't know though.
Like he was already gonna die or something, so it didn't quite.
Which is so cool.
That is cool, but it's like it's so probably not.
Right. I mean, he's also the only Drow with lavender eyes, not red.
Well, I think that something that both of us need to make clear in this episode and to our listeners, for anybody that's read a lot of these books. I know that you've read quite a few of them, but we haven't read every single Drizzt book, and I know that things start to get clearer. I think that I think it's the Legacy of the Drow, which I don't know if you've read those ones. So that all has to do with Loth, the Spider Queen, apparently, and I really want to read those.
They're very good. Can I tell you like kind of the premise of them?
No, because I want to. I want to do it. I want to read. Well, I'm gonna skip over the Cleric Quintet because apparently that's all.
That's not even about Drizzt. I don't.
Yeah,
think.
Right.
I've never even read those.
So I think that it's like this one, and then Icewind Dale, and then I think Legacy of the
There's Legacy
Drow,
of the Drow, and then the Hunter's Blade trilogy.
and I think there's another. There's a bunch.
Oh,
There's like
there's like
38.
6 or 7 more
Yeah, okay.
trilogies. I think there's 33. I could be wrong on that.
But yeah, anything that we're saying on here that is, confirmed in like book 31 or something, like I don't know. I'm sorry. Like we we will get to more of these obviously. But see, what I'm wondering is Salvatore's headspace going in. I really hope we can get him on to the podcast.
Me
That'd be
too.
so
Me
cool.
too.
But if he doesn't come
Check
on,
your
then
inbox, Salvatore.
right, seriously. But I'm wondering if he set out with this character like a D&D role. You know what I mean? It's just like this is how he is. You can write a lot of backstory, but you have to have some kind of like starting point. And maybe there just isn't much of an explanation for why. Because it brings the whole like nature versus nurture like conversation
Right.
into all of this. It's like Drizzt was obviously raised in this society, but from the get-go he's uncomfortable with it. And the question that I had is like, are the other drow uncomfortable to a certain extent for a little while and it's just stamped out of them, or are they born feeling like this? Are they born being this ruthless and terrible to each other? And obviously, I mean, Salvatore shows multiple times that this race of elves are absolutely cool with just the wholesale slaughter of each other and a bunch of other races too. They
In fact,
delight
they
in it.
applaud it. Yeah, they delight in it.
Yeah,
Very,
they're
very well
so
said.
so
Yeah.
fine with it. And I think that more than anything is what Drizzt has a problem with. Like. There's that scene where they see another house kind of go after another house, and it's kind of botched, and they just do kind of a sloppy job of it. And Drizzt is kind of watching with his family, and his whole family's just like, "This is amazing."
Like eating popcorn.
Right? Yeah. But he is like, "This is disgusting," and that's kind of part of his whole rise to morality
Right.
in the face of all this. But I don't think that he's got as much of a problem with the Drow hurting each other as much as he does with them hurting other races. Like when he goes up to the surface world and sees that whole mess, that's really the turning point of this entire book.
Right.
I do have another question here though. Oh wait, no, go ahead. I want you to
Yeah, the Drow, they don't consider themselves evil per se. They just think that's kind of the way that people should live, or at least the Drow should live, is they think that's like the best way to gain dominance, which is a thing that's exalted in their culture. And Drizzt is very much his nature, unlike pretty much every other Drow. And I am of the opinion that most Drow children don't really struggle with this battle of morality that Drizzt does. I think they're just kind of like, their nature is also supported by their nurture, whereas Drizzt's nature is kind of in conflict with his nurture. And I'm sure there are other exceptions like Zaknafine, but I think it's very difficult, as evidenced by Drizzt's life and his struggles, that to fight that nature not only is very difficult on a personal level, and with just like this constant brainwashing of like other races are evil and terrible, and also the whole culture is dedicated to Lolth the Spider Queen, and so if Drizzt's acts a few times actually take them out of favor of the Spider Queen and the priests. It's a very like big thing to have a priest and then a high priestess of the Spider Queen in your house. Their power is directly related to how in favor that family and them specifically are with the Spider Queen. So like your ability to take over another house may or may not, like there's times where like some houses attacking another house, all of a sudden their spells stop working because Loth is just like, sorry, it's like they're very intimate on almost like a first name, hey, what's up basis with their goddess.
See, it's really interesting because there's not one moment in this entire book, and maybe this will crop up later, but there's not one moment in this entire book where Drizzt is struggling with that ruthlessness or with that bloodthirst or bloodlust, which I thought was really, it's kind of telling, right? And in my intro to this, like the notes that I had written, I remember while I was reading it, I made this note in my phone where I said, at the beginning of this episode, I said, I love just seeing a good guy be a good guy. And then the other half of that was, and bad guys be bad guys. But then I kept reading and I did a little more research and I was like, wait a minute here, though. I don't know if the Drow are like inherently evil, because there is that part, and it's one of my favorite parts in the book, and it was touched on so lightly, but when Drizzt is in school, like in the academy at Melee Magthier, I think they're brainwashing them. They're basically
Yes.
showing them and telling them all about how terrible the surface dwellers are, how terrible the surface elves
Right. The
are, and
reason we don't
everything.
even get to go up to the surface is because the elves are ruthless and they kicked us out.
And it's interesting because that's why I'm wondering like if Drizzt isn't really struggling with that kind of like weird bloodlust that
No.
seems to have overtaken. Maybe a lot of the other ones are struggling with the morality that Drizzt has in kind of like this silent way where it's just this thing that's not really talked about. Maybe I'm reading like a little bit like way too much into it, but I don't think I'm not going to believe that the Drow are absolutely inherently evil because there are these parts about the brainwashing and how closely, like you said, connected they are to this whoever this fucking Spider Queen is. like obviously she is a very big deal, and it seems like she's been around for a really long time, like since the Drow went underground, like thousands of years ago. So
Hmm.
this is the Spider Queen is like this whole. I thought the Spider Queen was just another Drow. I thought Matron Malice was the Spider Queen for a second. I was like a little confused in the
Oh,
beginning because I kind of like pictured Matron Malice like as a spider for the first like 20 pages that I was reading this, and I was like, wait a minute, no, it's just a Drow like everybody else. Like I don't know what that's all about, but
yeah,
yeah,
no, she's an actual goddess, and she lives in the
okay,
pantheon. There's like I think 9 or 12 different levels of like um existence, like
yeah.
planes, and I think she lives on the one of the lower planes of where the denizens of the dark hold, which is like a different reality, like an alternate dimension sort of thing. That occasionally they'll bust portals open into and
Yeah, I know
go
they're
in
kind
there.
of doing rituals and just calling people like denizens of the lower planes up just
Hmm.
willy nilly.
Is there any you don't see? Yeah, you don't see Loth in this book at all. There's like
No.
occasionally in the books, there's like a it'll like go to the perspective of like a demon in one of the lower planes who's like being called to a god or something to do something
Yeah,
for them, which is kind of cool.
that happens in the prologue to the Crystal Shard.
With Ertu, right?
Yeah, it's sitting on his throne of slime.
Yeah. And he's using like he has like creatures. He's using like a footrest or something. He's just such an evil person. I mean, I think Drow. I mean, at least in like the D&D world, Drow are an evil culture. They're an evil race. I think, in fact, there's even a limit for. There's this thing called alignment in Dungeons and Dragons, which is basically your morality, your propensity towards good or evil, and it goes from like lawful good to neutral good, chaotic good, lawful neutral, neutral, chaotic neutral, then lawful evil, neutral evil, and chaotic evil. And I think the highest the drow can be are chaotic neutral,
Interesting.
which is like
Except
the
for
middle. Like you,
Drizzt,
except for Drizzt, who is obviously probably lawful good, the highest that you can
I would
be.
call him lawful good, and almost to a point of like Superman level. Like it's almost unbelievable, and but not quite though. There's
Right.
something I would like to see in later books him show some more complicated emotions. I think that that's probably one of the only things about this book where Drizzt is a very endearing character, except I feel like he's kind of binary in this book where
Yes.
he's either interested and intrigued in something and focused, or he's very bummed out about it. And obviously that is a consequence of the situation he's in. I'm not like
Right.
blaming him for it. I'm not blaming Salvatore for it, but like the character of Drizzt in this particular book is not even close to as interesting, in my opinion, as the character in the Icewind Dale trilogy.
We've mentioned in past podcasts how like kind of an annoying trait is kind of that by like he's just too good. And it's like this really walks that line. There's sometimes you're like, come on, man. Like,
Like
but
he could solve a few situations by just literally ending everybody in the room,
right. And
and
he could do it too.
yeah, it's like the Batman situation where it's like, dude, just kill
Yeah.
him. Oh my
Right.
god.
Just
Like,
use a
yeah.
gun. You know?
He won't.
There is a persona that develops in some of the later books, and this isn't giving anything away. What do they call it? It's Drist's like his animal thing, or but he develops this
Is it like a berserker
persona.
thing?
Um, it's more of like a feral sense, and he develops it when he's living. I won't say how he or when he develops it, but he develops this. He has kind of forced by circumstance to develop this animal feral nature
Hmm.
where he just acts, he does, he is an animal, and he really battles with it later on in life. You haven't gotten to the point where he has forced to develop it yet, but later on in his life he can kind of like drop into this just animal killer, and occasionally it gets the best of him, and he does things that he really regrets later in that mode, because he just like everything around him is just a thing for him to slay, while it aids him, and he becomes a even better fight. He gets like a spidey sense almost,
Oh, cool.
which
How
is
could you
really
make him
cool.
cooler?
Yeah, it's radical when he does get into this like animal phase, but he also can do things that he is not proud of later on, and so he gets a little bit more dynamic. But he's always a really good guy.
And
Like
you know
he's
what?
always
I'm
the
I'm fine with that.
guy.
Like I said at the top of this episode, I love a good guy that's a good guy. That's totally cool. But you can still push the complexity line a little bit and have him be unambiguous too.
Yeah,
But I'm excited to see where that goes. I have a question about Guinevere. It's really cool.
Guinevere.
It's cool to see how that beautiful relationship started. I was a little bit let down with the way that it started, though. It was
How so?
well, not really let down, but just more like he just appeals to this spectral cat. He's just like, "Come on, you're good, just like me," and the cat's just like, "I totally am," you know. And it's
Well, it's
just
like they're both in this society, kind of being used for evil purposes against their will. And so they kind of find like a brotherhood within that. In fact, though, I think brotherhood is probably the wrong term, because I think
yeah,
Guinevere is a female.
yeah. It's a sibling
A
nature or
sibling,
something.
yeah, they become soul connected via soul, and I think that's kind of one of the things that leads to this binding, this bond that they develop, is they're both kind of in this awful place, and yet they both want to
Being controlled, so to
be
speak.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can be your own
Guinevere is a creature
master.
from one of the lower plane, or no, she's one of the astral plane, I think, is where Guinevere is from.
Yeah, I mean, there is that kind of theme of freedom, becoming your own master. So I
Yeah,
think that
choosing
they
your
they
own
seem to,
destiny.
yeah, they connect quite a bit on that. I have another note here.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
what? Okay, how do I put this? The I have really split feelings on the whole storyline of Alton Devere and Massage and the
Handset or whatever.
all of that, all
Yeah,
of that.
yeah.
Okay, so I think that it needed to be there, because if it was just Drizzt, it would have been a lot of Drizzt. It would have
A
been like
lot of
it would have been
Drizzt.
like 200 solid pages of Drizzt either kicking everyone's ass or literally wishing he was dead. So there's and sometimes at the same time wishing, like
Right.
having both of those feelings,
I
but
hate myself.
it's just totally wrecking everybody. But so I think that it works. It expands a lot on the nature of Menzoberranzan. You get to see some more conniving, some more plotting. Alton Devere's motivations are very, very clear, very understandable. Massage is like the perfect amount of just like the worst, you know.
Just the worst. Yeah.
Like you never really know what he's gonna do. I really liked the Massage character a lot, but all of that being said, it kind of went out with a whimper. Like it was kind of just like Drizzt just kills them both.
And you're like,
It
oh,
it
okay.
yeah, like he had just super easy, barely an inconvenience. Just there it is, you know.
Yep. Could have brought the whole house down. Could have been this huge thing that they've got like lording over them for. But yeah.
Maybe we'll see some kind of consequences to that in the second book. But it just felt very like, all right, we got to tie this up. Driss is just going to go back with Guinevere and kill both of them. And that's fine. I'm glad they're both dead because they're terrible. I was nice. I didn't really care that much about Alton. I felt kind of bad for Alton Devere, honestly. He had to like mess up his whole face and everything, and it was just
I know, dude.
he had a
Acid face.
bad, yeah. It was just bad all around for him. And his motivations were very clear, and I was really excited to just see Massage just get taken out finally, because he was
Mm-hmm.
just the worst. And it was cool how in the school, Massage was like training Drizzt. He was getting like really close to him, not really close, but they were in very close proximity for a while.
Right. And then, so tell me about your thoughts about that fight in the competition at the end of like the melee mag there that happens every 4 years or whatever, and they all are basically put into a big cavern, all the students, and they're just kind of released to like fight each other.
I can't remember the guy's name. Like it was like Kolnaz or Kelthaz or something like that.
Yeah, because
Kill,
something.
something
Yeah.
like, but some a drow teams up with Drizzt and is basically like, let's go together, and then at the very end we'll just have it out, and may the best drow win. It's gonna be great. And then Drizzt is like, super down. Sounds great. Let's go. I would love a teammate. And then the guy just like
alone all my
betrays
life.
him. He betrays him like as the first chance he gets. And then Drizzt, you know,
is like hurt.
Yeah, he's like it shows
like
them like
pouty.
in their big bunkhouse or whatever, and they're like hand signaling to each other, which rises to a full-fledged argument, like vocally. But Drizzt is basically just like, what the hell, man? And
you literally stabbed me in the back.
But it was interesting because the other elf, there was so much like incredulity almost. Like, are you serious? Like,
how
we
are you
all
this
do
naive?
this. We all do this. This is our thing.
This is what our culture is based on.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. It's what their entire culture is based on. But it begs the question, like, what are the drow really getting out of all of this, though? You know, like what
power?
But not that much, obviously. And once you have just a tiny little bit of it, it's being taken away and coveted by everybody else. And it's like, what is one house getting that another house isn't getting, besides the favor of Loth to not be taken out by another house? That's the
favor
worst.
And the more favor of Loth you have, the more power that you have. Like the Benirs are the number one ruling house, have been for hundreds of years. Their compound is surrounded by this magical fence that's made out of this sticky spiderweb substance that you can't climb, or else you'll be stuck to it forever. Only the Benirs know the word that can release you from it. You can't slice through it. You know, they've been gifted all of these things and magical power. You know, with a snap of their fingers, they can do crazy magic. It's all power based.
You know, I mean, even aside from how quote unquote terrible all the drow are, I feel like as Drizzt, if I was in Drizzt's position, I would want to get out of there just from the sheer redundancy of all of it. You know, just from
tiring.
Just like you're never in a safe place, and when you are, you're not going to be for very long. And it's just, that sounds terrible.
Even like a member of the opposite sex who's trying to lure you and seduce you into something, there's a good chance that that person will try to slit your throat during the process for some reason.
Yeah, speaking of that whole ritual.
Oh boy,
that was odd. That was really weird. That was like some
pretty foul.
Yeah, I was like, I thought this was popcorn fantasy. What's going on here?
All of a sudden, his sister's like, let's make love under the light of the spider. It's like this drow orgy, basically.
That's basically what it was. It was this weird blood orgy. That was, I don't know if it was a blood orgy, but it was
might as well
probably going to end up that way. Yeah. And I really like what Salvatore did with the spiders, like the imagery of spiders and having it be a matriarchal society. It was really cool. It all made sense. You know, spiders are really awful to the men that they sleep with.
Yes, they usually kill them and eat them, right?
Eat them.
And even like the most powerful men, like the biggest mages and stuff, they're still no match for a priestess that's in the favor of the Spider Queen. They're very powerful.
I couldn't get the image of spiders out of my head the entire time. I was almost like picturing all of the drow as spiders, just because of the imagery that Salvatore kept invoking. He would not let that go. They're spiders. Like they're living in a spider situation. Whatever.
Oh yeah, and like all the art, you know, the city is like covered in art as well, with fairy fire like crawling up over everything. It's just a very gorgeous city, but in a very evil way. Do you go inside the priestess temple at all in this book?
I don't remember,
because there's just spiders everywhere in there, and it's death if you like step on one and kill one. There's times when like mages have to go visit a priestess, and they're like trying to brush the spiders off of them very carefully, because if they accidentally kill one, they'll just be killed.
Yeah, I don't remember
That's my hell.
Oh yeah, you don't like spiders.
No, dude, and they're all sizes. Just
man, I live in a basement, and I've got like I feel like Harry Potter down here. I got like spider friends down here. Like, man. If they're on the wall, I don't even mess with them. Like like if they're on me, then we got an issue, you know. But if it's just there's one in the corner right now. I can see it right now. He's in the corner. He's just a little spider guy.
I try, but man, there's just something about them that just rubs me the wrong way. They're just like fingernails on a chalkboard to me.
They're so important.
Oh, for sure. But like, they just terrify me.
He's just like my buddy up here, just keeping all the little bugs out of my room. You know, like he gets to eat. I don't have little bugs in my room.
Yeah, I mean, they're good. I acknowledge their like awesomeness, but man, they just scare me.
Unless he is a being, he's a denizen from one of the lower planes,
Dude,
and he's got a crew of drow worshiping
scuttling
him.
along. What do you think about the whips that the priestesses use?
I thought it was a nice touch that Briza had. It seems like a almost like a station. Everything's so about
It's
station,
all
but
hierarchy.
yeah, it's all hierarchical. But it seemed like Briza is the strongest of the sisters, and she has the most snakeheads on her whip.
Mhm.
I caught like that was
I think
interesting.
once you get to be a high priestess, then you get awarded like a
A
cat of nine tails,
many-headed,
except it's a
yeah.
snake of nine tails because they're all like. For everyone who hasn't read the books, it's like you get a snake handle, and then there's like a living snake at the end of it, and so they're not like whipping; they're like whipping and biting with these like snake whips. How that doesn't kill the snake, I have no idea.
And Salvatore's imagination is it's inspiring. I mean, I know that that sounds corny, but it's like it's very inspiring. Just the amount of fun that he has with his writing, and
Totally.
you know, I've seen some critiques of his writing where people say that the prose isn't very good, but just you can take that and get out of here with it. I don't really care
Totally.
about that. I mean, like it is a little clunky sometimes. I would say the only parts that I thought were a little bit that were dragging just a little bit. He does have a tendency to info dump descriptions like a little bit, like
Yeah.
a little bit. Like when he was describing Menzo Berenzon in the beginning of the book, it's just like, damn, dude, this is like 5 pages of.
Right.
But
Like, let's get to some story. He,
but
he
he doesn't
describes
really.
a little. Go ahead.
He doesn't really do it like all the time, though. It's just like sometimes when he does do it, it's just like, man, we could probably move on. Like we could probably
Right.
move on just a little bit, but it's fine. It's not a big deal.
Much like that kind of goes hand in hand with my other, like, if there's anything that I would say that's a little bit like, okay, about him is that when he's doing a thing, he's doing a thing. And then also, he gets a little like one sided sometimes. Like, this person is that thing and they will forever be that thing. And
The-
like, I don't know. It's very simple. It makes for an easy read where you're not like confused about much.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even call that necessarily a bad thing, but it does lead into my one of my last questions here, which is I want to ask: do you think that the Drow Society, and this is with us both not having read up to book 38 or whatever, but do you think that the Drow Society is beyond redemption?
I mean, that is a theme in these books for sure, especially in some
Right.
of the later ones. Um, no, I don't. No, I don't. I think that they've got a vast work ahead of them should they try even to get on the side of redemption. And not only that, but they also the things that have power from them, like the gods get power by sacrifice and worship.
Right.
And, Loth's main source of power and revenance is from the drow. So there's some very powerful beings in this world, gods, who are going to work very hard to maintain that situation. So no, just because I like to subscribe to the like no one is beyond, and like obviously Drizzt did. If Drizzt can, he's one of many, but the other ones could. No, but man, is it ever going to happen? Like probably not.
All right, so to expand on that just a little
But
bit more.
philosophically, yes.
Right, yeah. But to expand on that a little bit more with all the reasons that you just laid out for the reasons why they are the way they are, or at least the reasons why they'll probably never progress past where they are, would you consider the society to be victims of a sort?
No,
Interesting.
no, I think they have.
You think
I
they've
mean,
done too much bad to merit that?
I just
that's
think they've chosen their choice. I think that they've,
But
you can
have
say,
they though? That's a
well, they're set up very much on the negative. I'm not saying like, no, they all chose it. It's their fault. Like, I'll give them a big, big pass in that like they grew up in the worst of the worst, and like it would be very difficult to be anything other than who they are. But
yeah.
I subscribe to the like free will, and like that does not excuse your actions.
Well, especially when those actions are like essentially genocide.
Oh,
I mean, like,
yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Killing
like,
women and children and the
yeah,
helpless and
it's
innocent.
pretty. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and yeah, probably it opens up a lot. It opens up a lot of because I almost do want to say that the Drow are because when you throw in the fact that like you just said, there is a whole hierarchy, a whole pantheon almost that is kind of set to keeping them the way that they are.
Hmm.
That's interesting. Like
And
that's
if you decide to go good, that may make your house fall out of that favor, which could lead to the actual destruction of every member of your family. So, like,
interesting.
every card in the world is stacked against them.
I mean,
So, like, it's pretty
like
victim-y, but at the same
but
time,
at the
I
same
don't
time,
like to
like
remove personal responsibility of,
yeah,
like, that's on you. You
but you're
shouldn't have
also
murdered
like, I
that
wonder if
innocent.
there's some sort of like gap that, or you know what I mean? Like, I wonder if there's like some threshold they could come to where it's like they don't have to murder like every single other being they ever come across,
Right.
just for fun, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and
But
it's
I'm
not
not.
just the fact that they murder them, they, like, laugh about it.
Right, I know, and this episode isn't like I'm not trying to like rehabilitate the Drow society or anything, but it's just it makes me wonder like where does the buck stop? You know what I mean?
Right.
When you have this being, this like all powerful source of all of everything, their whole way of existing. It's like how much of the responsibility do you lay on the society when like there's literally a god basically controlling it? And I think I need to read more about it to really start developing an opinion, because from where I'm at, it seems like the Drow are kind of, as a society, kind of victims in this whole situation. But I think that like I need more information, obviously, but it's interesting.
I mean,
Absolutely.
like, effectively they're victims, but in like
Yeah.
philosophically they still have freedom of choice. They still
Right. Yeah.
should choose to do what's right, though.
And Drizzt
They have
does.
been, and Drizzt
What
does,
was
yeah, they
Drizzt
have
just?
been.
Did Drizzt just get a good role though? You know what I mean? Like,
Right, right.
that's a
And role
really
is
good
the right
question.
word.
It's very apropos to
It's
use the
very
word
apropos.
"ro."
In fact, did you know that this whole Forgotten Realms world was actually designed by a gentleman named Ed Greenwood in 1967 for D&D,
I
who I've
did
never
know that.
actually
Yeah.
read any of his books, but I, I
There's a
really
whole
like
like Faerun. Is that the place? What it's called? The
Faerun.
overworld?
Yeah,
Faerun.
yeah.
There's like a lot more books in Forgotten
Oh
Realms than
yeah.
just. I went on a whole fucking
Oh,
tear
it goes
looking
deep.
through these.
And I kind of wish, I know it's not like popular now, or like what's really cool now is to create your own world, do your own world building, have your own magic system. But I really like the idea of setting, of just having this open realm, this already pre existent world that
Yeah.
you can build upon the lore in. It's just like, it's kind of like Marvel, It's like really nice, and half of the work is done for you. And I think it
Yeah.
saves a lot of time to focus on characters and growth and relationship, as opposed to like, well, when this metal is mixed with that and consumed by this person in this situation, they can burn that and then make this magic. And it's like, I don't know, it just like removes a lot of brain power and you can focus on different things. And I wish there was more of that, and more of
Yeah.
those being just worlds that we could inject characters into.
Yeah, no, there's a sort of like fellowship, it seems like, between like Ed Greenwood and R.A. Salvatore and a few of the other writers that were contributing to Forgotten Realms. And I mean, you don't really see that anymore. I mean, everybody's kind of
No.
localized. Like Brandon Sanderson's got Cosmere, but nobody's writing Cosmere books. It's all
Right.
Brandon Sanderson. And
And it
that's
adds to like this depth and lore, right? You hear of like Elminster, this mage, and it's like, who is he? Well, he's another author's like main character who was this really powerful
yeah.
mage back in the day. And it kind of adds this like, just kind of how uh Steven Erickson does for Malazan. It has this depth.
Yeah, like
And
Ian Esselmont helps out with those
yeah.
too. So they're kind of doing it, but there's nobody else that's contributing to Malazan. But I don't know if anybody else could. It's not the same.
Oh, man, that would not be the world I'd choose.
No way. No, absolutely not. I'd want to write some Cosmere stuff, even though that stuff is really complicated. But maybe if Brandon gave me his assistant who does all the lore stuff,
Dude, I'd
it'd be a little
forgotten Realms
easy.
it up.
Is
I wonder what the rights are for that. Can anyone just like hop in?
I no, they have to see. That's what they did with Salvatore. Is they had so like I think Morgaine had already been written. There were a couple series that had already been written in like the late '80s, and then they hit all right Salvatore up. I think this is where how it went. And
I think
if we
you're
get
right.
if we get Bob, if we get Bob in here.
Bob.
If we can get Bob in here, maybe he can explain it a little bit better. But I'm pretty sure that they had basically like commissioned him to write
Oh wow.
something, and then he wrote something that I think he wrote something that wasn't the Crystal Shard,
I
but
think
it
he wrote
was
the Cleric Quintet.
I can't remember. We have to. It doesn't matter. But anyway, it is really interesting that you bring that up. I've never seen that before with anybody else really, other than Forgotten Realms. I'm like trying to think if there's like this big shared like written universe.
Yeah, that like anyone else is sharing. I can't
Yeah,
think of one. You know, like Narnia is like Narnia's. That's C.S.
that's
Lewis's.
C.S.
There's
Lewis.
yeah, like
I
there's
guess with
obviously huge world. Star Wars.
yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, actually, no, the like Legends and the new canon and stuff, the extended universe. That's all. That's kind of like Forgotten Realms. Now that you mention it, that's a good one. Yeah, it's a good example. Hey, look at us.
Yeah, yeah, Star Wars and Star Trek, of course. But like, yeah, I wish there was more of that. Like I said, it kind of just has this. Once you've read a few books in there, and like obviously every book written in that world does a little bit of world building to let the reader know, like if this is your first time in the Forgotten Realms, this is what's up. But like, way less than I feel is than most books would need to. You know. Okay, so I have a few questions for you. One, I want to know what was your favorite scene of this? What was your favorite action scene of this book?
My favorite action scene,
Or
probably
yeah,
probably the part with the Driders,
yeah.
whatever the hell those things were. That was weird, and I don't know
Have
if
you like Googled
Salvatore.
an image of those? Those are great
No,
looking.
should I? Oh my
Oh,
god.
definitely you
Okay,
should.
give me a second. Oh no. I'm like scared to look. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought.
Yeah, yeah. They're awesome.
Ah, oh my god. Yeah. Okay. So, that scene was really cool because I mean, obviously, I know nothing bad, nothing that bad is going to happen to Drizzt. It was just really, really well blocked. It was really, really cool.
Mhm.
Um, just, it took me by surprise. I didn't know what was going on. I was kind of right there with Drizzt, just not really understanding. I was like, "Where the fuck are we? Like, this is really weird. What the hell?
Right.
What is that?" And then like another one comes up, and it's just,
Yeah.
oh my god, yeah, it was. And then I mean, he would have probably died if Matron Malice hadn't come in and dealt with it. So yeah,
Right.
that was probably like one of the high point fights. Like the really short little fight between him and Zachnafane was pretty emotional. Like towards
Mhm.
the end, and it's a bummer. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the last time Drizzt sees the Zachnafane, isn't it? I mean, they kind
Um,
of make up, but
before
it's pretty
Zacopine gets or
sacrificed
just
to Loth.
sacrificed, yeah. One of the things that we missed over, which was a huge part when we were talking about this nature nurture, like is it their are they victims? Do they have choice? That sort of thing. The character of Vierna, his sister, is a really interesting one because she has a lot of compassion towards him at the beginning, and then you can see she kind of commits to the dark side, so to speak.
Right.
Tell me
Even though
about
she's Zachnaphane's daughter as well. She's the closest
yeah.
relative.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
kind of tell me about your thoughts about her like raising Drizzt and her choosing to be bad or good, or what do you think? What's in her future?
I don't know. And this might lead into me talking about like what I think is going to happen over the next book or two.
Yeah, and that's my final question for
Sure.
you.
Yeah, I'll just kind of combine those. I mean, I think that Drizzt right now at the end, I haven't started Exile yet, but he scurries off, he skitters off into the
Yeah.
Underdark.
Well said.
I don't think he's done with Menzo Berenzon yet. I don't think he's quite ready to go to the surface world. Um, I don't know what would bring him back. I'm kind of curious. I don't even know if he's going to go back. It just makes sense that he would. I mean, unless there's something going on with him in the Underdark, and it's just another part of like his. It just seems weird to set up all of those characters and all
Right.
of those relationships and only have them be in like one book. It seems like there's some kind of like unresolved stuff in that story. So I think he's going to go back to Menzo Berenzon. But the book is called Exile too. I don't know. Anyway,
If you think really hard about Dritzt's motivations and like what would cause him to return to Menzo Branzan, you might get close to some of the things that may or may not happen. And the story of like, you know, Drizzt is forever haunted by his past, not only in his brain and like this whole nature versus nurture, his instinctually like who he wants to be and who he thinks he was born as, but also by the literal people of his past, the dark elves of his
right,
past.
yeah.
Without giving away anything, they're
I
always
don't I
around.
don't think he's done yet. So yeah, I think that if he did go back to Menzo Berenzon, um, I think he's yeah. Vierna, I think might come around. It's his closest relative. I would love to see Dinan and Matron Malice taken out. That'd be really great. And I'd like to see more of the Underdark. We did get a
Yeah.
glimpse into. There was like that race of. I think there were gnomes.
This for
And
Fnebly.
yeah, you're so on top. I love it. Yeah. So like the gnome society, and that was kind of a really good glimpse into like, hey, you know, these drow kind of think everybody is just, you know, way beneath them, but there's like
Right.
whole other societies living down here in the Underdark
They
and
also
stuff.
mention other drow cities.
Yeah, totally. It'd be interesting if he goes to another one. Maybe they're different. Are the other drow cities also like involved with Loth, or is that just a Menzoberranzan thing?
I won't say anything one way or the other because it
Yeah,
might give away
totally.
some things in the story, but
Thank
maybe.
you.
You're too
Well,
smart. I can't give you little details or else
well,
you'll
I
know stuff.
appreciate that. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I think that's gonna wrap it up here for us today on Book Reviews Kill. Everybody, thank you so much for listening to this. Oh god, it's so much fun talking about these books because like this is just right up mine and Chad's alley. We could talk about this kind of stuff forever. And while this book, it seems simple on the surface, when you get down into the Underdark, things start to get a lot more complicated.
Oh,
And
nothing simple in the Underdark. What a cool setting for a story.
I
I
know, yeah,
love the
so
Underdark.
much
It's
different.
it's just
Yeah,
like a setting that around every corner there can be, a cave full of glowing crystals or
yeah,
magical this or a mushroom society or pools of lava. There's just so many cool things that you wouldn't normally come across on a surface setting. And I really love the Underdark. And I think it kind of adds to the mystique of the books and one of the reasons why I love them so much.
yeah. I mean, we're dealing with a lot of really conventional tropes here with fantasy. I mean, like
Yes.
the kid raised in a society he'd rather not be in is not new,
No.
at all. The Mary Stew like better than everybody at everything thing. Usually I get kind of sick of it, but for some reason with Drizzt, I think it's really cool. But the setting does a lot of heavy lifting here. And even with Icewind Dale, I mean, 10 towns, the like this group of 10 communities that are all like right next to each other that kind of band together, but they've also kind of got their inner strife going on, and it's like in this terribly like inhospitable place, and there's like barbarians and everything, and it's like ice trolls and ice dragons and shit. Like, Salvatore is very, very good at letting the setting do a lot of the work,
And not only that, but he takes it one step farther by like matron malice. Like, I wonder if that character is good or bad. It's like naming your character Darth Vader, literally translated to dark bad. It's like there's just he does a very good job of painting a picture and using all of the elements of that picture to lead you in the direction of the emotional feel that setting has, and it's just done very well done. Sometimes it's not subtle at all, but it still adds.
Well, Bob, Mr. Salvatore, if you're listening, please come on the podcast. We'd love to have you
Please
on
answer
here.
my email.
Yeah, please answer Chad's email. And everybody that's listening, thank you so much for being here for this recap. Join us in a week or so for our recap and discussion of Book 2 in the Dark Elf Trilogy. It is called Exile. If you'd like to read along with me, and I guess Chad's already read this like 5 times, but Chad's here in spirit, very, very much so. But yeah, everybody, hope you have an awesome rest of your day. And of course, happy reading.
Bye, everybody.